time midnight struck on New Year's Day 2010 up until this very moment, who has been the most important in-ring performer in all of pro wrestling? Forget deciding on the best wrestler of one solitary year, expand that scope tenfold, and then ask yourself once more who ruled the roost for the given duration. Not so easy to decide, is it? And besides, what makes a great wrestler anyway? Is it their ability to deliver acclaimed performances inside a ring night in and night out? Is it their ability to be a reliable top guy, fitting into the shoes that a big main event star must wear? Is it someone who transcends the business, burrowing into the mainstream world outside of the wrestling bubble as a genuine face of the industry? One has to assume that all qualifiers are needed: physical performance, role portrayal, and utter transcendence. With those parameters in mind, who best fits the bill? We here at Cultaholic, with a little help from our friends, asked ourselves this very question as we pondered long and hard, deciding who among a chosen few was truly the best wrestler of all the 2010s. There are scores of incredible wrestlers that have roamed the planet in this decade, and we present to you now the absolute best of the best. But before we get there, a few honourable mentions. Pete Dunne, Adam Cole, Cody Rhodes, Will Ospreay, Volta, and Big Match John. Without any further ado, I'm Adam Pachisi from Cultaholic.com, and these are the 10 best wrestlers of the 2010s. Join us! Number 10, Becky Lynch. When the decade started, Lynch wasn't even an active wrestler. She had retired 3 years earlier at the age of 19 due to a head injury and was working as a flight attendant while pursuing a career in acting. Imagine trying to convince somebody familiar with Rebecca Knox's body of work that by the end of the 2010s, not only would she be the biggest female star in WWE, but perhaps its biggest star regardless of gender. At a time when WWE used their women mostly as aesthetic filler, such a thought required navigating several continental divides. And yet, here we are in the final weeks of 2019, where Lynch is idolized by millions of fans and has a victory in a WrestleMania main event to her credit. When the women's revolution was introduced in 2015, Lynch was involved, but seemingly in a peripheral capacity as the plucky friend of Charlotte and Paige. Lynch was popular with fans for a number of reasons, but yet she seemed to reside a tier below the chosen few atop the division. Nobody could have guessed going into SummerSlam 2018 that an attitude change on Lynch's part would be the cause of such a seismic shift. When an irritated Lynch took her frustrations out on the forever shoehorned Charlotte, the fans understood her angst and rallied behind her. The man was born, making good on her righteous anger by doling out harsh words to those in her path and then backing up her verbal poison inside the ring. Always a skillful and reliable wrestler before the radical change in tone, Lynch was now the strongest, most complete female personality WWE had ever seen, and she resonated with the fans far more than the typical thrown-together fare of the Diva era. Becky Lynch took on the man as a handle to swipe at Charlotte Flair, but for what she managed to accomplish in such a short amount of time, the label is apt. Number 9, Seth Rollins. WWE's resident architect slash Kingslayer slash Beastslayer has become a polarizing figure. On one hand, he's a physical marvel, tirelessly leaving it all on the canvas and around ringside in an ongoing attempt to reinforce why he's the best at what he does. And it's hard not to appreciate that. Contra to that, fans who may value Rollins as a world-class talent, arguably the greatest wrestler to ever come out of NXT, have somewhat soured on him due to questionable comments he's made in recent times. He's extremely pro-WWE, and his immense pride doesn't always read well. It's a shame to see Rollins become resident whipping boy for so many, because just a few short years ago, before getting engaged to the man, he himself was quite simply the man. Ring of Honor fans knew all too well what Rollins brought to the table as Tyler Black, dotting his 2010 with excellent ROH title bouts against Roderick Strong, Austin Aries, and Davey Richards. It didn't take long before WWE came calling, and when Black became Rollins, he ground his way through the developmental system as class valedictorian. But how far would Rollins go on a main roster that sometimes hesitated to push junior heavyweights? Well, 2 years and 4 months after arriving on the main stage with his brothers in Kevlar, Rollins was standing tall at the end of WrestleMania 31, swinging the richest prize in the game over his head. As a character, this was peak Rollins, the most cunning and devious of villains, playing his trump card in grand fashion before the biggest audience. But whatever the booking, Rollins the wrestler remains consistently strong, whether he's working his ass off in 65-minute performances on Raw or just delivering match of the night otherwise. Love him or hate him, Seth Rollins' work ethic and drive to be the best have never diminished, and it's why he caught everyone's eye in the first place. Number 8. Chris Jericho. When the decade began, Y2J was on the outs with tag team partner Big Show, letting his icy disdain for the world slip in favor of pouting neediness. Today, he's the kingpin of All Elite Wrestling, the self-aggrandizing rock star who views himself as bigger than the promotion. The Axl Rose fedora is far from the only hat Jericho has worn in his career, as the multi-time world champion has proven to be as versatile as a pop diva when it comes to style, attitude, and accessories. Even today, Jericho's overall presentation remains in flux, never one to rely on the same old, same old. Today, Jericho is 49 years old, and it's clear in his appearance that he's not the spring-loaded thrill-seeker he once was. And yet, Jericho is at the same time the most ageless wrestler there is, defying the passage of time by remaining relevant and contemporary. His uncanny ability to evolve better than anyone else keeps him at the top of cards, where New Japan saw value in him as returning guest and AEW as a cornerstone icon. WWE before them were happy to bring Jericho back for extended spells, and even there, fans never got the same Jericho twice. At his advancing age, Jericho is pro wrestling's Metallica, not as thrashy and frenetic as he was in his youth, but still finds ways to mightily deliver the goods, as matches with Kenny Omega, Cody Rhodes, and Tetsuya Naito have shown. He's also the consummate team player, using his stardom to elevate the likes of Darby Allin and Scorpio Sky, as well as his inner circle teammates. Perhaps no wrestler has more MVP-like qualities than Le Champion in terms of sheer merit to his home promotion. At any age, Chris Jericho has been a wrestler's wrestler, giving so freely of himself without ever diminishing his value or stock. Number 7. Brock Lesnar. Now, before you cry foul, consider the following. Number 1, only wrestling in conjunction with the passing of Halley's Comet or the release of a decent Uwe Boll movie does not disqualify you from consideration. Is it Brock's fault that Vince McMahon is all too happy to offer him an ungodly amount of money to work a feather-light schedule? Well, as Brad Pitt in Inglourious Basterds might have said to Brock, I don't blame ya, damn good deal. If you can look past the relatively paltry number of matches Lesnar wrestles in per year, you're left with a genuine star that still performs on another level while still looking the part all these years later. Yes, Brock has his bouts that feature more Germans than a crowd at a Bayern Munich match, but one figures that's more Lesnar following someone else's orders. When given the opportunity to give and take with someone, we've got an optimum Lesnar. CM Punk, Daniel Bryan, Finn Balor, AJ Styles, Seth Rollins, Roman Reigns, and Samoa Joe are among those who matched up beautifully with WWE's final boss. And that's not even considering Lesnar's fight to the near death with The Undertaker at Hell in a Cell 2015, almost matching the intensity and spectacle of the match they had 13 years earlier. Brock's reduced schedule works to his advantage, in that he never grows stale from week to week overuse. It may not be the most convenient thing in the world for a company's champion to be gone for long stretches, but that is on WWE, not Lesnar. And it may be a little less true now than it was from, say, 2012 to 2016 or 17, but the idea of a Lesnar match was truly exciting. Between his box office and mainstream appeal, and the fact that no wrestler can do precisely what he does as well as he does, Lesnar has proven to be a colossal draw with once-in-a-generation talent to back him up. Number 6. Hiroshi Tanahashi. On a wrestling landscape where rising stars and established heroes may have busy, overly wordy nicknames, Tanahashi is easily summed up through simple brevity. Rather concisely, he is the ace of New Japan Wrestling, and that's hardly a cooked-up moniker. So much of New Japan's resurrection from also-ran to global superpower was ferried on the back of Tanahashi, who has embodied the spirit of the promotion as well as any pillar in company history. Calling him reliable is apt, but fails to tell the whole story of an idol whose endurance seems to have few limits. Already a 4-time IWGP Heavyweight Champion upon entering the decade, Tanahashi doubled that total in the 10 years since, among them a 400-plus day reign, and tallied a couple more victories in the G1 Climax to boot. But more impressive than the afforded gold is the quality of work. Fans and critics will point to his legendary battles with rival Kazuchika Okada as proof positive of Tanahashi's greatness, but one can't leave out epics with Shibata, Suzuki, Nakamura, and Naito from the past 7 years, to go with countless other acclaimed battles. Even among such an esteemed peer group in New Japan, Tanahashi has consistently remained in the absolute pantheon. What is it about Tanahashi's legend that will endure the longest? Is it his inimitable charisma, able to draw fan sympathy through subtle storytelling and sheer force of personality? Is it his innate capacity for going hold to hold, move for move with the greatest wrestlers on the planet, doing so for more than a decade and a half? Is it his consistency as a New Japan cornerstone, ever reliable whenever called upon in changing times and transitional periods for the company? Whatever feelings Tanahashi and his total body of work evoke from you, it likely attests to a star of a million accolades and overqualification for each. Number 5, AJ Styles. A seemingly eternal standard bearer for total non-stop action, the phenomenal one began the decade as TNA World Heavyweight Champion. If you were to tell somebody, even his biggest fan, that within 10 years he'd have held the IWGP Heavyweight and WWE World titles too, they may have found it hard to believe. After all, even when he was TNA's top dog, he still seemed to play second fiddle to the assorted veterans brought in from other major promotions, ones coveted by starstruck management. Despite the otherworldly talent Styles possessed, and the fact he virtually carried the promotion for long stretches, seldom did he feel like the biggest fish in a small pond. There is a workmanlike level of excellence to AJ Styles, a continuous safe bet that, given enough time to work his magic, will probably have the best or second best match on even the most loaded of cards. That statement is as true today as it was in 2002, when the clean-shaven, short-haired upstart was doing his regular dance of death with Jerry Lynn in front of Nashville crowds. Point is, Styles taught his fans to have high expectations, and whether as a show stealer or a show saver, or both, he never let anyone down. A couple years in New Japan built mightily on the existing praise for him, proving he belonged on the same level as the Okadas and the Suzukis and the Nakamuras of the world, while the Bullet Club iconography imbued his underrated edge. Within 1 year in WWE, he was trusted to put John Cena down clean as a sheet and hold the top prize in the game. To be that valuable in the eyes of 3 enduring promotions, however you may feel about TNA, cannot be a coincidence. The effortless agility, gritty wrestling style, and underrated charisma have only proven themselves through the years. Now wrestling on a hefty WWE contract, AJ Styles' hard work has paid off, and few deserve his spoils more. Number 4, CM Punk. When it comes to cultural influence, there aren't many wrestlers, including the other inhabitants in this video, that quite equal exactly what Punk has meant to so many fans. Despite only being an active wrestler for 40% of the given time frame, his legend continues to endure. Granted, him being a talking head on the late-night WWE discussion show only fuels the rumors of a long-anticipated comeback more, but even if he were to spend 20 years in exile, we'd all still be talking about the possibility of the prodigal Punk donning the star pattern trunks once more. Now that is a man who truly made his mark. You can talk about his matches, and sure, the battles with John Cena, Daniel Bryan, Brock Lesnar, and The Undertaker are absolutely worth mentioning. In terms of main roster WWE matches, Punk is going to rate very highly among his peers for the decade, 6 years in retirement or not. But what endures most is how he made fans feel, rabble-rousing with an incendiary microphone in hand. In all too safe, all too sanitized WWE, CM Punk was desired danger, upsetting a tedious balance with an explosive torrent that he could deliver oh so matter-of-factly. His name is still chanted today at WWE events, a counter-strike to anything that feels like business as usual or worse. And that's why Punk resonated the most, because he wasn't business as usual. In the prior decade, he became an unlikely WWE performer, and everything about his rise seemed to meet unnecessary resistance. Fans identified with parts of Punk's struggle and his subsequent anger, and anything he said and did felt real. When Punk beat the system at the 2011 Money in the Bank in his native Chicago, his victory was everybody's victory. The fact that it was a 5-star match was secondary to the population's desire to see one man win. They can't stop chanting CM Punk's name, and some people fail to understand why. Number 3, Daniel Bryan. When you think of the moments that best define Daniel Bryan, your mind tends to veer toward one of his in-ring opuses, or the times when he conquered some great roadblock en route to a championship win. But really, to see Core D. Bry, all you have to do is go back to that famous night in Seattle when, surrounded by a cadre of former WWE champions in a special ceremony, the fans treated him as a guest of honor instead of the supporting actor that he was cast as. Bryan's disbelieving smile and laugh were from a man too humble to truly grasp his fame. Yes, the American Dragon will go down in history as one of the greatest technicians there has ever been, but few marvels of the mat ever earn the kind of love and respect that Bryan gets. That's why when WrestleMania 30 looked like it was going to come and go without WWE's most popular star in the world title picture, fan response was swift and negative. Consummate wrestlers have developed cult followings, but the support behind Bryan was on a whole other level. The crowds changed the WrestleMania booking, forcing the hand of the machine to switch gears. Who else wields that kind of influence? And the funny thing, Bryan wields it sort of absent-mindedly. He just goes out there and does his job almost flawlessly, whether it's chain wrestling at an expert level, ragdolling himself against a larger foe, eliciting sympathy for his gallant efforts, or earning scorn for his caustically delivered thoughts when he happens to play the bad guy. Through time, the support for Bryan grew to mythic levels, and all he did to earn it was do his job. Unknowingly, Bryan tapped into an evolving fan base that puts less premium into over-the-top sports entertainment and more towards visible hard work, the trials and tribulations of those who keep on grinding away. Daniel Bryan probably never saw himself as the eventual embodiment of this kind of pro wrestling evolution, but there he was, smiling beneath the confetti and fireworks at the Superdome. Number 2, Kenny Omega. Opinions on Omega have differed, and the more prolific his work has gotten, the more some detractors have doubled down with their stance on his apparent flaws as a performer. To the polar opposite end of that spectrum, the raves from others for Omega have only increased with each passing year, walking in lockstep with his rise to the apex of New Japan Pro Wrestling. When you earn the handle of Best Bout Machine and Dave Meltzer KOs the Shift and 8 keys on his laptop because of your contributions to wrestling, it means others have noticed what you bring to the table. Perhaps more so than any other wrestler, Omega is extraordinarily difficult to define, a walking intangible. What his fans see is a man with unparalleled total athleticism and an endless reserve of energy, exuding the sort of rare charisma that made him a megastar, one that WWE's machine could not claim paternity to. Omega's critics, meanwhile, note the spot-tastic nature of his matches and take issue with his sometimes offbeat selling. Different people look at the same portraits and come to wildly different conclusions. In a time where pro wrestling has never been more amorphous, an unconventional star like Omega may well be its king. And the plaudits are there. Sports Illustrated declared him Wrestler of the Year in 2017, while PWI deemed him the #1 male wrestler in the world the following year. His series of matches with Kazuchika Okada have been lauded both for their storytelling and their mold-breaking execution, and his 2018 alone is littered with one transcendent classic after another. Is he everyone's cup of tea? Obviously not, but in the eyes of his supporters, he is pro-wrestling idealized. Kenny Omega forged a path to the top all on his own, confounding some but captivating many others who view what he does as state-of-the-art and an evolutionary step forward. Number 1, Kazuchika Okada. It's almost inconceivable that close to a decade ago, Okada was tooling around in TNA as Samoa Joe's camera-toting sidekick, with little more to show for his American excursion than this throwaway role. Though TNA gets hammered for squandering such an undeniable talent when he was in their midst, Okada views his time with the company a bit more favorably, admitting that it taught him the value of having a character. He returned to New Japan a different man, joining the villainous Chaos stable as the repackaged Rainmaker. A month later, he defeated Hiroshi Tanahashi for the IWGP Heavyweight title, and the rest is history. The past 8 years have seen Okada forge a Hall of Fame caliber career, making good on his unextinguishable aura, a natural star in every sense of the word, oozing charisma even in silence. The 5-time IWGP Heavyweight Champion, who boasts a near 2-year reign in his collection, has been everything a promotion could ask for in a leading man. Okada may well be the modern-day Ric Flair, an adaptable ring general, easily meshing with wrestlers of differing styles and characteristics. When you draw comparisons to the Nature Boy for how you handle yourself as a perennial champion, it speaks volumes. The craziest part of Okada's successful career is that he's only 32 years old, the age Flair was when Nate captured his first world title. With health and motivation intact, we could still be seeing Okada rule the world during the voting for the next decade awards. Following his celebrated rivalries with Tanahashi and Omega, who will be the next to create history with the man himself? When all said and done, Kazuchika Okada is certainly going to be in the argument for greatest wrestlers of all time if he's not there already. But as the last 8 years have shown us, Kazuchika Okada is tops for the 2010s as its best overall wrestler. Long may he reign.
Thanks for watching. Let us know what you think in the comments down below. You can follow us on Twitter at Cultaholic. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Cultaholic. If you enjoy what we do here at Cultaholic, you can pledge to us on Patreon. That's patreon.com/Cultaholic. And most importantly, don't forget to hit subscribe and join us.